America can bomb Iran, but it cannot beat Iran. And Iran knows exactly how to make sure this war never ends, because it never has to win. It just has to survive. Friends, welcome. On one side, we have a claim from Iran's Revolutionary Guards. On the other, we have a CIA report. And the White House is caught right between them. Here's why it's trapped. The report says that even if Iran can't win a war, it will always be in a position to drag that war out indefinitely. And when you keep getting pushed back to the negotiating table, don't even think about walking away with a clear victory. Meanwhile, Iranian commanders are claiming that during this ceasefire period, they've built certain missiles that, once deployed, will fundamentally shift the balance of power. In other words, after that point, they won't be interested in coming to the negotiating table at all. Somewhere between these two very different paths, the CIA report matters, and here's why. The CIA has been producing Iran assessments for virtually every American president. Go back 11 years to the Obama era, when the CIA was working for him. Then in 2018, it was working for Trump, who then tore up Obama's nuclear deal. Then Biden came along and tried to rebuild some kind of framework. The CIA was working for him too. And now, in the present day, Trump is standing on the battlefield with one hand, while openly pressuring Iran back to the negotiating table with the other. He's applying every form of pressure imaginable, but he still can't make it work. That's when the CIA report becomes critical. And here's something that's never been true before in any previous era. The Revolutionary Guards have never had a weapon like what they have right now: control over the Hormuz route. For 4 decades, every discussion between America and Iran centered around nuclear weapons. Israel kept sounding the alarm, warning that if Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis ever got their hands on nuclear weapons through Iran, it would trigger global catastrophe. But now, in this new era, the Revolutionary Guards aren't shy about saying, "We're ready. Our preparations are solid." And behind those solid preparations, both the Pentagon and the CIA are acknowledging it in their own reports. Iran's position today is roughly what it was before the war started on February 28th. Not just back to square one, it's actually stronger. During this period, China supplied Iran with chemicals that accelerated its missile production. Russia provided satellite intelligence. Both of those have amplified Iran's capabilities. And military analysts are now saying, if war breaks out again, you'll find yourself right back in the same post-February 28th situation when everyone assumed Iran would be wiped out almost instantly. So, is Iran genuinely more powerful now? Does America face a new kind of crisis? One where it can't win at the negotiating table and can't defeat Iran on the battlefield? To understand this properly, let's flip back to 2020, 6 years ago, when Trump wasn't yet president. He posted a tweet at the time that speaks volumes in today's context. Biden had just been elected, and Trump wrote, "Iran has never won a war, but never lost a negotiation." Think about that. 6 years ago, Trump himself acknowledged that defeating Iran at the negotiating table is nearly impossible, whether or not it can win a war. So is this the new reality? Iran is positioning itself for war while refusing to come to the table, and America wants it at the table, but is trying to back away from the war? This is a fundamentally changed situation, and it wasn't long ago. Think back to 2015, when Obama first opened negotiations with Iran. Remember that era? It started with secret talks with the Iranian president, then dozens of sessions. The final agreement ran 160 pages, but it was never treated as a formal treaty. No one even formally signed it, precisely because it wasn't considered a binding agreement. And in 2018, Trump came back into power and tossed it out. Now here's the first and most significant shift between that era and this one. For the first time in 47 years, Iran is openly saying, if war restarts, we will use missiles we built this very month. And our missile production capacity cannot be stopped. If war resumes, this time it will be a global war. Iranian commanders are saying this openly. And here's the thing. This mindset didn't exist under George W. Bush. It didn't exist under Obama. Not under Biden either. Not even in Trump's first term. So why is this happening now? Why, at this exact moment, does Trump want to get to the negotiating table while Iran is pushing toward the battlefield? The biggest reason may be global energy. Right now, Iran controls something that the entire world is desperate for, and its grip on the Hormuz route may be its most powerful weapon yet. Or maybe the real power boost comes from China's chemical supplies. During America's naval blockade, a ship was intercepted and U.S. intelligence sources confirmed that it was loaded with Chinese chemicals that Iran can use for missile manufacturing. And Iran's missile production capacity is several times greater than America's. That's precisely why Israel has always argued that Iran's missile program needs to be stopped, while America kept focusing on nuclear enrichment. And when you put both those perspectives together, the IA chief isn't mincing words either. The worst global energy crisis in history may be upon us. The World Bank and the IMF are both warning that this energy crisis and what comes after it could trigger a global economic collapse worse than 2008. And at the center of this, Trump's diplomacy and Iran's strategy are on a collision course, a 180-degree mismatch. That's why there's no clear path forward, not at the negotiating table, not on the battlefield. Let's break down the contrast. Trump's strategy is all about applying maximum pressure and forcing the other side to fold immediately. Iran's strategy is patience, flexibility, and willingness to drag the war out for as long as it takes. Trump believes J.D. Vance can forge a New Deal framework in these upcoming talks. Iran believes the Hormuz route is a weapon more powerful than nuclear weapons, and this energy crisis will eventually pull the entire world into this conflict if the war drags on. Trump operates under the assumption that he's already crippled Iran militarily. Iran operates under the assumption that the global economy is in its crosshairs. And since the global economy will put pressure on Trump, Iran doesn't need to fight Trump directly. It just needs to outlast him. Trump believes his aggressive, impulsive temperament will eventually force Iran to back down. But Iran's new leadership has shown a rigid determination. Call it steadfastness, or stubbornness if you prefer. Trump wants results now. Iran is playing a long game. Trump wants a splashy, headline-grabbing deal. Iran is focused on the smallest details, positioning itself as the dominant power in the entire Middle East for generations to come. Iran has Israel in its sights, and behind Israel stands America. So Trump thinks force will get compliance. Iran thinks its core interests are non-negotiable, and it would rather endure massive suffering than give those up. That's why Iranian politicians, when they come to the table, repeatedly say, "We are prepared for martyrdom, but we will not bend on our principles." Now, with all of this in mind, let's take a moment and look at the full arc from 2015 to 2026 and examine what the CIA report said, what the Pentagon stance was, what American presidents thought, and what the international environment looked like across all 4 eras. But before we do that, let's look at what Iran's actual military preparation looks like right now, before things spiral toward open conflict at sea. Iran is certainly showing off its missile arsenal. But let's not ignore the fact that America's naval blockade is very real, and the U.S. military is releasing its own footage and imagery to reinforce the message. If these talks collapse, hostilities will resume. The Iranian side, for its part, is saying, "Whatever happens, we will sacrifice everything except control of the Hormuz trade route. We will collect those billions." And Trump is saying, after the people who were killed on February 28th, the new Iranian regime, the new commanders, the new supreme leader, they are smarter. But in the same breath, he adds, if war breaks out again, there will be far greater violence. That's why the American military is putting out its own visuals, making clear it is still preparing for war. So will Islamabad's preparations be for nothing? Will J.D. Vance fly from Washington to Islamabad today, or won't he? Does Iran actually see going to war as a better option than going to the negotiating table? Because through war, it can apply more direct pressure on America? And is that exactly why Trump is saying he'll come to Islamabad, to build international pressure that can bring Iran back to the table? Is this the moment we've arrived at? Let's flip one more page of history. When we mentioned the 2015 negotiations at the beginning and described how those talks played out over 2 years, remember the setting. 11 years ago, at the 160-year-old Beau Rivage Palace Hotel in Lausanne, Switzerland, the preparation was on a completely different scale compared to today's Islamabad talks. Back then, Secretary of State John Kerry had 5 lead negotiators, and alongside them, an entire team of specialized experts. Today, we have J.D. Vance, Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. And here's the thing that keeps being said, Real estate deal-making is not the same as diplomacy. Negotiating in the shadow of war, weaving together the geopolitical threads before a conflict explodes, that's not something you learn from a book. It takes experience. Wendy Sherman, who led the American negotiating team in 2015 and later became Biden's Deputy Secretary of State, built years of Iran-specific expertise. The CIA team involved in those talks had deep knowledge of Iran's uranium enrichment programs, what configurations could become weapons, what satellite imagery could detect, what was happening inside underground bunkers. Trump's current team? They're approaching this like a real estate closing, believing a deal will happen because they want a deal to happen. But in this new reality, Iran is trying to drag America back into exactly the kind of prolonged war that could spiral into a global conflict, one where the developed world, which has always assumed America will find the solution, watches America fail. And what does America failing mean? It means the end of Israeli power. And what does the end of Israeli power mean? The rise of a new superpower in the Middle East, called Iran. Strategically, for the first time ever, Europe minus America, and Iran plus China and Russia. That's a scenario that would boost BRICS power, strengthen the SCO, weaken the Quad, and put America in a difficult position against China's dominance in the seas. Australia and Japan would have to build new strategies around naval power, strategies that don't include America. And gradually, this entire scenario would push the global economy away from the dollar, a warning that will only grow louder the longer this war continues. So here's the biggest question of all. If you can't beat Iran at the negotiating table, and you can't win the war, what is the third option? Maybe diplomacy's third path is this. For the first time, bring back the entire world that America has been alienating. Either rebuild those alliances, or get trapped in a China-Russia strategy where Iran is marching towards superpower status, not through negotiation, but through warfare. And maybe that's exactly why all of Islamabad's preparations, right now, look like just that. Preparations. And nothing more. Thank you so much for watching. And if this kind of in-depth, no-nonsense geopolitical analysis is what you're looking for, please subscribe to the Republic Daily channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.